Live. Just gonna put up a few notifications. Yeah. New edition. All right, I think I have everything set up, and I think we can get going.
Cool. Okay.
So, it's the first.
Nope.
It's Monday. I think I think everyone sounds a little dragged out. This is
Yeah.
the first Meta Monday where I actually have a plan. So, why don't we get started? Hey, all right. Oh, hell.
What happened?
I didn't have my title for the stream set up right.
Cool. So that will be auto-updating every hour. Awesome.
All right, there we go with that. Oh, let's get started. As this is going, I guess, to end up on YouTube later too. So why don't y'all introduce yourselves? Let's start with
the first one there.
Heckle, I guess.
Heckle, really, and the one inch who is the creator, I guess you could say founder of Tabletop Veterans, which are assisting me in that process. Really the one running the league that is, I think it's the only ELO established matchmaking system right now for Warhammer 40k. That's about it at the moment.
And when you do play, what army do you run?
In regards to armies, I've been in a mix of Blood Angels, Raven Guard. I've meandered along Gene Stealer Cult and Tyranids, but have found nothing there. So really just in the Space Marines at the moment, still trying to find something that fits my playstyle.
It seems to be a theme with the way the ninth is going right now. And you, Nova, hit the people with who you are.
I'm Nova. I just play random games. I know what I play, and I play knights. That is all I play, and that is all I will ever play, because I can't make non-knight lists for anything. They are the best.
I tried to help you, man. But no.
Oh, yeah, no.
Me know what to press Thunderhammers.
I decided on 15 Thunderhammers and jump packs, but then I was like, no, that's 555 points.
You never do that.
Yes.
Jesus.
It's only 30 attacks, 30, 40 attacks.
Yeah, pure Thunderhammers, where you could possibly go after a Titan with that amount of damage. An actual Titan.
Yeah.
I mean, if you absolutely need something dead.
Pretty straight. I think we're both pretty straightforward people with our preferences on what we sort of play. I mean, since it's why I like aggressive armies in the sense of an ambush style of being in your face, destabilizing, like making it to where your army doesn't work the way it should be going in at the start.
Yeah, those armies can actually be really fun, even if you have to hold back just when you spring that moment of disrupting the enemy's entire strategy.
Yes, or if you just lose, that too.
Like I've been doing lately.
No, more like me. I went up against Nick Rose yesterday with my Blood Angels army, and it dawned on me that when I was doing that, I got everything I wanted out of it. Almost everything. I messed up on a couple things. But overall, it was just a push of I enjoyed myself despite the fact I was losing because it was just I got to do everything I wanted to do rather than just be denied because, oh, I got alpha striked off and all that stuff. Granted, I needed to go first for it to all work, but regardless of that point.
That's fair. Lately I've been rolling way too many ones. I've angered the dice gods myself. I failed a 3-inch charge with Harlequins.
And anyway, your submission was approved, by the way, so you were actually clear to wreak havoc with your list. But outside of that, I believe there were outside of what we're just playing. I think there were a couple more questions you had for us.
Oh yeah. Well, we're coming into a new edition, and I know before Ninth launched, and even for a few days after, you were wrapping up Alpha League.
Yes.
And after seeing how lists were run in that, and coming into Ninth, what major differences are you seeing for now?
Well, the build type the dynamic itself has completely changed, to be honest, because with right now, ITC it doesn't have anything provided. Granted, at the same time, it is supposed that they had a level of involvement with the design of the competitive mission types and for how Ninth was going to be in the competitive setting. So with the release of Ninth's chapter approved and the Grand Tournament 2020 mission pack, it has turned more into a hold game where players are making use of highly mobile units in order to either get pressure or to make use of scout deployment, which is referring to just deploying out in no man's land for during their deployment phase to have an early domination But it really comes down to the response of the opponent as to how well they design their own list to counter this sort of early pressure of just holding objectives. It's turned into a sense of you have guys you put out early, and your opponent has guys who are extremely fast and field a lot of firepower. Some very easy culminations of how this mechanic works, unfortunately, is on the Space Marine side still, where benefiting from land speeder Tempests, I believe, which have an immense amount of firepower at 8 strength and 6 strength and some decent armor pen, to really sort of clean out any initial control their opponent has gotten. Because speaking with Nick Rose, he's someone who actually prefers to go second in the current setting, with the roll-off of going first or second being the determining factor. That really stems from the fact of your opponent can push out, but most armies can't really handle Strength 8, AP2, or AP3 turn 1 in their face already with units already pushing up the board in response. Not a lot of armies can field early high toughness pressure on the board immediately, which is where people are thinking along the lines of like cursors or just for speed deployment with highly mobile units. But usually if that's the case, you're sacrificing your toughness or armor saves or something like that to try and hold those positions. And then your opponent is reaping the benefits of having speedster units as well, but they possibly have more firepower and they can back it up, especially with the fact that the 9th edition has made vehicles and all non-infantry with heavy weapons a lot more viable, thanks to them ignoring the movement penalty. As of right now, builds like that, where it's more of a speedster style and having backup firepower going second, actually is favorable for the smart player against a player who's all about early domination, like an aggressive style. That will shift as players become smarter and more aware of the fact, and then it will be a possibly the meta might shift into more of a slow grind, pushing out, trying to clear out your opponent from within their deployment zone again. We might see a return of Alpha Strike in some weird way as players become smarter, but in a different sense of targeting only objective-relevant units. For instance, Nick Rose, when I played him yesterday, fielded 2 servitor squads. 2 servitor squads that were meant to operate off of the deploy scramblers objective, which is a very easy thing to do if you plan your setup correct. And you can get pretty much a full 10 points from turn 1 even without an issue. If you just roll for advance at the end of the turn, you already have all that. It's going to be a lot of getting as many points early as you can, so that way you can divert your units instead to just simply scoring, denying your opponent kills. The game has very much become.
That sort of leads into where I wanted to go next with that. With the launch of your 9th edition league, Tabletop Veterans League, what kind of people are probably getting experimental? What are you seeing so far?
We are seeing Custodes rise up as a form of a gatekeeper situation, as they very much have the durability to try for early aggression and not suffer the most out of it. Another one would be a recent thing that's been popping up in our own Discord channels and text chat is a form of Death Guard Nurgling spam and other types like that. It's terrifying to look at because it is just it's lasting your opponent. The weird part is it's not speed that are the most successful experiments. It's durability that is winning out to the opponent. And in contrast, I have people like Nick Rose who are holding the level to their guns, but working within the confines of what they know, where he was running salamanders with land speeders instead of the usual Devastator Bomb, fielding a couple of Eradicators as well. It's making use of infantry and using 9th edition's new rules to the fullest, rather than just holding to lines and basically hoping your opponent doesn't field anything that can just obliterate your army through overwhelming power of damage. But then they're sacrificed for volume. It's a back and forth that we'll be seeing, and the settling into whatever specific builds that are out there, it's still up for debate. We have only had the league. Ninth has only been running for about 2 weeks. That's it. So I would say after probably about a month to a month and a half, you will start to see common builds pop out. I just don't think it's in the realm of already set upon what the meta is.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, as the edition goes on, will there be a common? Oh, if you're running this army, it's most likely this if you're playing in a competitive setting. And like at the end of 8th, if someone said Imperial Fists, you had a fair idea of what to expect from the list, or Iron Hands, or other armies. You had a fair idea of what the list would be. Right now, they just seem to be trying everything. Is that what you're kind of seeing for the moment? Just getting into the new rules?
This is a tough nut to crack. The situation right now for 9th edition is that everyone is trying everything because they don't know what 9th edition will end up being. As of right now, GW is planning on releasing codexes for all armies. All of them. No one's going to be left out supposedly for 9th edition, which makes it to where whatever you're running right now, sorry about that background. It's just whatever's in store for all the armies that are out there, it's not going to stand whatever someone is running right now. Every single codex for every single army basically translates into, oh, I'm running Custodes right now. Okay, well, you have the Forge World Index yet to come out, which will drastically affect the rules setup. You will also have a new codex for them coming out, which will also change their dynamic. We don't know what stratagems, what rules will persist. You can assume that the Psychic Awakening rules for all armies covered will have still some standing, of course. Those stratagems will probably carry over.
As a Custode player, I will be incredibly surprised if Networked Machine Spirits persists.
Well, this is also an opportunity for them to actually make changes still, because Psychic Awakening has made some broken builds here and there, not to the point of being dominating any tournaments or anything like that, because unfortunately there wasn't any opportunity to test them. No tournaments came around during the time the Custodes had their Psychic Awakening release. So it's more of a situation of no one knows, because most of the time meta builds are built on tournament lists where people see who won, they'll run them, they'll see how they're designed, and then they'll stick with them, because who cares at that point? You're not going to dig further, because the people who search for counters are usually the ones who are all going to be ending up winning the next tournament. And you then develop into a sense of meta chasing for a good portion of the competitive community. Right now, everyone's in the dark. The circumstances of the world itself are actually making it very hard to find what the top few lists will be.
That's fair. And also, as you said, we're kind of in an index stage again.
Yes. It's not a full overhaul anymore. We still have old 8th edition codexes. It's just the level of trying to translate what GW's intent is for these old codexes into 9th edition.
What are some of your favorite changes going into 9th?
Is that for both of us, or?
Yeah, that'll be. Yeah, we'll start with Nova on this one.
Gee, I wonder why he enjoys that one.
I play Knights, and they already ignored it anyways.
Did the Armaturists ignore it? I forget.
No, So for the arm cannons, they did, but for like the heavy stubbers, they didn't. But they're heavy stubbers and they're trash, so I
Yeah,
never
that's a
really
good point.
bothered with them anyways. But
Right, but
honestly, vehicles always should have ignored heavy. That's just a common sense change they finally made.
yeah. Not to mention they added bikes to the equation. It is just infantry, and it's just infantry actually that doesn't ignore it. So if you had a swarm, I guess that had a heavy weapon, they could ignore it as well. But pretty much making it to where it is solely based on the fact of, oh, if you're infantry, you don't you then suffer the penalty, rather than, oh, does this vehicle fall into the category or something like that now. Yeah. GW, another thing I would to add on rather than just echo it, is the introduction of keywords. Now, people can already argue with me on this one that keywords already exist and stuff like that. No, not on this level. Games Workshop has finally begun to realize that trying to make flavor text for every single ability in the game does not help. It makes it confusing because players don't know what they're referring to. Now, with the Indominus set, you can look at those new data sheets and realize they have even labeled all of the auras that the characters involved in the Indominus set have. They have an aura keyword on them, which leads to believe that going into 9th edition for all these codexes now, if you have an ability that denies an aura, you can then reference to the target of that ability that all of these don't work, these still work.
That also clears it up for the actions thing, because if you do an action, you can't use the aura.
Right.
So
good. At the same time, with the sense of how actions work, making it more between taking an objective or making use of your unit's firepower or whatever combat power they have is pretty crucial now, because it's no longer just, okay, these engineers can't do this or whatever. No, it's now taking an action instead to where they can't do anything for that round, but it's now less of a they have to stay put and they keep generating it. It's now a sense of you do this and then you continue on. They're making it where you commit a full turn for that unit and then you can move along because they've now categorized how it works.
And a lot of those actions can be interrupted if the opponent is crafty enough. So there is some play there too.
Absolutely.
And also the addition of like rule keywords. After learning Horus Heresy, I can really appreciate universal special rules. Universal special rules. So I personally kind of appreciate that little change there.
Another one I'd like to mention is terrain keywords. This is probably it is the biggest thing actually I'd say for 40K as a whole, regardless of edition. Making terrain keywords is the biggest thing they could have added because it clarifies so much when you go to a tournament. If you label it as such, there is now a reference sheet you can go to saying it provides this, 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 and this. It is no longer where a particular terrain piece provides this kind of material and then you have to work within those confines. It is, you can give this piece of terrain these sorts of traits, and that's it. You're done there. And now players can easily understand what the objective of that is. The only issue then comes to complex terrain that some people are trying to set up that can possibly be exploited, and that's more of an in-depth conundrum than anything else.
I mean, if we're getting into some of the more intricate, pretty scenic pieces, I think we're leaning more towards casual play for those. And the terrain keywords could really be interesting there, but that's sort of drifting away from the talk here. But it bears mentioning.
Those are the main things that popped up for me, because really when it comes to the rest of the rules and what has come into 9th, that more just falls to what's added on at this point. Because objectives, they're interesting, but it's a baseline. And right now, with actual leaks that have been made regarding the new Space Marine Codex, and I believe Necrons might have been as well for objective stuff, but there's a Space Marine leak that refers to the fact of the objectives that armies are going to get specific to their faction are not going to be held in a separate category from the baseline. Instead, they are being added on to the category. So players aren't going to be able to have a luxury of this extra category when they're playing someone who still doesn't have their codex. It's just going to be a special mission for them within a category. They can't stack some of the stuff and eventually run into being a full kill army still, because then if you do that, you take away the point of the game itself, where someone can still build an alpha strike army and get maximum points.
And continuing on this topic of changes, what are some of your some changes that you think might hurt the game, or maybe that you just don't like going into 9th?
Knights should ignore obscuring and aircraft.
Don't they already ignore it? I thought obscuring didn't apply to.
So they don't get the benefit of obscuring, but they still suffer from it.
Okay.
Same thing with stuff with 18 plus wounds or aircraft. They should just ignore it, honestly.
Mm.
Even if it's like with a penalty of -1 to hit, it's still like I played a game with some of the tabletop pro guys, and yeah, the fact that obscuring, like I probably wouldn't have won if I'd have had obscuring. I ignored obscuring, but it definitely would have been a closer game.
Mm-hmm. That's a situation where I'm not sure how they would implement it to be more of a balanced situation, because from there, if you take away the fact that obscuring doesn't work against Titanic or 18 Wound Plus or whatever, maps then become just an open field for that situation. But in that aside, least favorite change? That really comes down to the deployment setup of how games are run. Granted, I'm very focused on the balance of the competitive scene as it is. But when it comes down to how the deployment works, there are pros and cons to what 8th edition was like at its end state, and pros and cons to how 9th edition is in the current state. Full deployment allowed for full deployments, which was deploying your entire army first and then your opponent did so afterwards, promoted a level of just mindless aggression or pure defensive strategy, rather than any sort of balanced tactics. And even those who did balance tactics were really in the upper echelon, where it's like a 1%. And everyone else was sort of suffering from the fact of their opponent. You didn't have to think too much into your deployment when it was the full and the back and forth. However, when it comes to the alternating deployments of put down one, put down one, put down one, put down one, that's all well and good. But the issue that comes from this is, at the end, how you decide who goes first after that point. Because it's a level of... It's hard to really explain in this situation, because it's a case where someone could try and gamble it to go aggressive, but they fail that roll and they suffer for it. Someone could play defensive, and their opponent wins and makes them go first, and then they lose an entire turn of action, potentially. And it's back and forth. There's a lot more decision, though, when it comes down to that, which actually I'd say is a pro. It's just, it's a weak benefit, and that's probably my least favorite thing about this, is deployment still needs to be fixed in some way, shape, or form to make it a reasonable balance, but I don't think it's going to be an obvious solution in it.
That does, in my experience, yeah, the deployment is a little weird to work around sometimes.
That's it for me, to be honest.
Well, my next question is, what armies do each of you think are poised to make the most going into 9th?
Harlequins.
Yeah,
Harlequins and Custodies are probably going to be the main ones we see the first couple of months until everything starts to settle out.
Custodies and Harlequins probably. Harlequins are pretty much like Eldari Custodies in a weird way.
Yeah.
It's pretty much a sense of their durability through their saves. Just the 4-up invuln concept itself is something where it's a level of okay, and your opponent is just watching you make 50-50s, and that can easily skew a game either which way. And that's the problem with the 4-up invuln. And with the changes coming in to how Space Marines will be operating, it's going to be probably them more prominently, again, for the first couple months. And then things will start to peter out and be a bit more in favor of how other armies are. It's a really tough call. It's too early of a call for me to say any other armies are really poised to make a difference. Necrons have some interesting stuff, but I don't feel like they got enough out of it to really make much of a difference in their playstyle. Sure, they got a bunch of melee units for their setup. They
didn't even get a Psychic Awakening. They just kind of got skipped right at the end.
No, they got Psychic Awakening. It was Pariah.
What was it? 1 unit?
No, they got a good section. I can't reference it right now. I don't have the file directly on hand, but it was the Psychic Awakening for them. So it was 3 armies, I think, in there. It was Inquisition, who really got 1 unit, and a couple more strats, but maybe not even that. Another one involved, I believe, was
Necrons.
Necrons another, and I believe it was Adeptus Sororitas, potentially.
Oh, hello,
I think it
Ludens.
was just Necrons and Inquisition.
Hmm.
Even then, it was just like a data
Thank you for
sheet
coming
for
by.
both.
Yeah. It was more of a I think it was a rules update or something for a couple of Necron units. There wasn't much, but Necrons being the first to get a new are going to be one of the 2 armies getting a new codex first off. So they're in a position to where they can actually run away with things if they got a good buff. It just depends on how GW prefers them.
Just the first 30 minutes.
Space Marines, from what information I am privy to, or I've been told in this case, Space Marines are in a position to where there will be nerfs and there will be buffs, and I think it will bring them in line more so than we have seen pretty much from the back half of 8th edition. The fact everyone is aware of this already, that all chapters being brought into the main codex will actually be a pretty decent buff for the access for the non-codex compliant chapters. Codex chapters might see more of a nerf. There might be some other nerfs that apply to non-codex. Just the fact that everything's being condensed opens things up for a lot more possibilities for Space Marines to be actually more of a variety instead of just like, oh, there's 5 Space Marine armies out there that are going to be getting codexes. And people would start to complain again, as we've already seen many a time, where it's a level of GW loves Space Marines, they keep releasing codexes, keep releasing supplements for them, which supplements will still exist, but it's a level of now it's all condensed into one. It's going to be a lot less content that will be put towards Space Marines, and we'll be seeing other armies, I think, pop up with getting more equal shares, to say the least.
Now they'll just have 2 base codexes.
I think it would just be 1, because I think Deathwatch is even getting included in the codex, potentially.
Everybody except for Grey Knights is in that one.
That's why I said 2 codexes.
Yeah. Well, Grey Knights, so Grey Knights are an interesting one. It's very hard to categorize them as just normal Space Marines, despite the fact they are Adeptus Astartes in a way.
I've been playing for a couple years now. And what about you, Nova, on that same You said Custodian Harlequin.
Yeah. Well, I think Harlequins will probably be the long-term. Custodies, I think, is going to be popular for the first couple months, and then people realize that after you spend all the CP, they're pretty much the same as they were before Psychic Awakening. So we'll probably see people start to drift away from them.
It's like playing Centurions with when you don't have them with CP anymore.
Yeah, like they're strong, but they're not overpowered, which people want. I think Ultramarines are probably going to be a mainstay just because of how tactically flexible they are. Then I'm not really sure. Depends on how
I mean,
things
if
play
we
out.
include sub-factions, I think White Scars are going to probably see more play than they did at the
Yep.
tail end of 8th.
I expected a couple people in the more competitive, higher level competitive, and we are at the moment, and they are in agreement. A couple of them are in agreement on the fact that White Scars definitely have some builds that can actually draw even from their 8th edition variations and just sort of work within those lines, and they'll still do good.
Yeah. I think AdMech probably aren't as strong now due to Engine War FAQ, but I think they're still definitely scary if you do like the one of two builds that they have. And,
They can still bring a considerable amount of durable firepower, so
oh yeah,
they do at least have that.
oh yeah.
From what I've heard, AdMech might very well be getting stuff that players won't be happy about. That's for certain. But it will be a clarification that helps deal with some of the rule situations that AdMech still have, pertaining particularly to possibly holy orders and stuff like that, where you can just throw it on any unit.
No, they already did that. That was the FAQ. You can only take
okay.
only your warlord can be from the Holy Order. You can't use the stratagem anymore to get that. You can only use base codex warlord traits from that.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, they definitely received a considerable nerf. Also, the fact that Forge ruled mechanicals only affect that specific Forge rule.
Oh, thank God for that one.
Yeah. So yeah, they've definitely been nerfed from what they were, but they're still better than what they were before Psychic Awakening. It's just that they've been pushed into fewer builds now, I believe.
Honestly, to incorporate some particular information, I would have to say there's a couple armies that probably won't rise out from the muck they've been stuck in. Gene Sealer Cult will be one of them, because their points do not make them fieldable, regardless of what their codex might be. Another one would have to be Orcs are in a tough spot. They can field firepower, they can certainly do work, but their build type, how they operate, is not very compatible with the rule set for competitive play. It's very tough to field them. Boys, right? Using orc boys and all that in the current meta of high durability, being able to survive, makes them a lot less impactful. But if we see a fall off of 2-up armor saves, actually, this is the weird part. A 2-up armor save makes boys useless. But if you drift to 3-up armor save, then you can incorporate the values of volume starting to have an effect.
In my experience, even with a 2-up, high volume can do more than you would expect.
For sure. But it's the level of variance where you have to incorporate probably a good level of maybe 5% either way of what variance can allude to, and that pretty much makes it to where boys aren't really playable. Sure, a player can roll bad, but then the orc player is relying on the opponent to roll bad. Terribly bad.
That sounds like the orkiest strat ever.
Yeah. But it's consistency, it's not going to win tournaments, unfortunately. Granted, there is, funny enough, in one of the top fours right now in 40k stats, I believe it was Vanguard Tactics actually had an Orc player that went 5-0 or 6-0 and 6-0 or something. And it was funny to read through that because I get the feeling that people just weren't prepared for what he was running, and that was about it.
Was it a typical list like we're used to seeing for Orcs, or was it something off the wall?
It wasn't Vanguard Tactics. It was one of the first two. It's only 2 GTs have been recorded from on 40k stats. This was at the Adelaide GT of 42 players. It was by Andy Penn. He was running Death Skulls with a War Boss on bike. Oh, he's running Death Skulls. Okay, and wow,
quick
he
question,
didn't even run a regular.
in case I have anyone curious about seeing this, do you have a link to this I can throw up so people could take a look at?
Certainly. Let me send it to you. This is a direct link to the list. So he actually went full on vehicle, which actually I haven't seen this. I haven't seen anyone run this yet. And this looks reasonable because it's making use of Orc melee still, but in the hard hitting style rather than a level of just overwhelming baseline strength attacks. Because 2 Bone Breakers, a Burn a Bomber for the auto explosion into a massive castle pack or whatever. The Burn a Bomber, by the way, is 155 points for a Death Rocket. It will explode turn 1 on as many units as possible and not care. That's 155 points that will make back its points on its death. The War Boss on bike is probably one of the scariest things out there for that Orcs can field. A Death Killer War Trike, Jump Drag Step. Yeah, this is all about mobility, which is convenient. How we've discussed what will win out in 9th edition. So this is definitely a powerful list that can bring a lot of hard-hitting melee rather than volume-hitting melee, which I think is going to be a big trend.
This is
for 9th edition.
Looking at this is actually something I was thinking we would see come out of Orcs going into what we currently have for 9th.
Well, right now it's about how people are on the uptake. Overall, I have run into 2 players who are running Bad Mood still, and they're doing Shoot-A-Boys, a bunch of Smash-A-Guns. Someone was running Meganobs and had a Bone Breaker. He was actually closer to this, and I won by a smaller margin than I did against the Smash-A-Guns. And he was disappointed in himself. I told him it's just about testing, and it seems like he was on the right track, to be honest. Overall, this is a list that definitely shows Orcs can stay in the game, but it's all about what settles, what after the fire and the ash, what's still standing.
And I don't think the old mech gun builds are going to stick around as easily as something like this will.
Right. Unfortunately for the mech guns, thanks to the mobility that vehicles have gotten, or any gun types, no longer really an option, I would say, because their mobility is not able to be capitalized. It's only 3 inches, and that's it. That's all they can do. It's just a case of they were good in a game where if you set them up in kill lanes and an opponent had to peek in order to get a shot on you, they could return the power tenfold and would just kill whatever they were looking at. Now, unfortunately, with the removal of specialist attachments, actually, from how everything from Orcs or from any army, the souped-up shotgun is gone.
Yeah, the Dreadwog. I believe that was the detachment. The Dreadwog. Yes. That's gone.
So it now becomes a game of what big things can you feel that also hit hard at the same time, rather than can you do mid-match your points to output ridiculous amounts of damage. And I don't think shooty Orcs will be a big thing going forward in 9th edition. I think Orcs will go back to overwhelming you with just heavy hitters now. They might very well be another form of like Terminate. It could be like playing Terminators or something with lightning claws or thunderhammers and storm shields and that sort of deal. Of just it's a bunch of big things that are coming at you fast. It's almost like Custodies now, but it's all bikes.
I do see one thing on this orc list that does bear pointing out. War Boss on Bike, which is actually in Legends, so it would come down to what a TO would allow.
Like I don't believe is in Legends
Oh, I thought it
because they
was. I thought all the regular sort of bike stuff for orcs, kind of along with some of the marine bike characters.
Warboss on Bike. Let me double check this one. Warboss on Bike is from. It's from Index Xenos 2. So if I go back to the Legends document, let's see if I can find it. Use Legends. Here we go. And for Warhammer 40k, Orcs. Because in the first place, when it comes to Legends, it's non-competitive play. Pretty much, they don't work in match play. So the Warboss in Mega Armor, Warboss in Mega Armor was put into Legends.
Okay, so so that was my mistake there. Okay.
The Big Mech went in. Big Mech on Warbike is gone. The Red Gobbo is gone. Painful on Warbike. Vortex. Actually, it makes even more sense that it's not Legends because the Captain on Bike still exists for Space Marines. But no other biker does. So it's a good way of a comparison where they're using Space Marines in a way as a baseline and then applying that to other armies to a degree. Because you can still get Farseer Skyrunners and Warlock Skyrunners as well. They're still good. The Autarch can't. I don't know what the deal with him is. Actually, can the Autarch be on the Skyrunner still or no? I'll have to check that later.
I think the Autarch on Skyrunner still exists, but I don't have that document on hand right now.
Yeah, it's fine.
But I did. But scrolling down, I'm noticing something interesting that is worth bringing up. Space Wolves.
Well, there's an obvious component to all that, which I'm going to answer straight up. Yes, for tabletop veterans, we did remove the Defenders of Humanity from all Space Wolf units, save for their troops. We did do that.
It was just an interesting little
Oversight.
oversight. Yeah, that's the best way to put it there. And I'm guessing this tournament didn't think about that, and we see this Space Wolf list here at second in this.
Considering the situation of if all of them have an OBSEC and they didn't change anything from that, that makes perfect sense. Because that's Space Wolves are become objective based rather than just simply kill based. Overall, when it comes down to that, the reasoning that we put into why Space Wolves don't have it is because the intent behind Defenders of Humanity for all other Space Marine factions is just the troop choices. Now, if Space Wolves had a different label, if it was a different name, unfortunately, this is what we have to resort to from GW, unfortunately, until we see otherwise, is that since Defenders of Humanity was not labeled something else for Space Wolves because it didn't have to be named the same thing, the fact that it just said this, it was the same title of Defenders of Humanity is why we made it just a true choices, and we saw it as an oversight.
I mean, thinking of Wolfen with OBSEC is absolutely terrifying.
Yes. And not to mention they're all running Storm Shields, which, by the way, Storm Shields going into 9th edition will not be seen probably for a lot of units that you see using them normally because of how they're going to be working going forwards, which is just simply a +1 to your armor save.
I remember seeing before 9th officially dropped and that little change in the little narrative document about storm shields, I saw like Custode kits sold out, Assault Terminators sold out. It was wild what people were buying, thinking they were getting ahead of the curve.
Which they potentially are. But we don't know what the codex is going to field. We don't know what the kit is going to be like, what units can field what. Granted, some units will stick around and be able to make use of it, but the storm shields, as of this moment, there's a mix, unfortunately. Custodes and Terminators might very well make a return thanks to how the storm shield is +1 to your armor save. But that's later. Right now, it's just a 3-up indole for most stuff, save for the Indominus data sheets.
Yeah, until we see those actual changes on those.
In fact, actually, I would say that thanks to the adjustments for storm shields, Space Wolves will actually be dropping in their tier, like how well they perform, when the new codex comes out.
Oh yeah, especially if that happens to Wolfen. Yes.
So
Which
you'll
is
never see Wolf.
is actually kind of unfortunate for Space Wolves, because
Nah,
throughout
they're filthy
8th
characters.
they got the raw end of the stick
Good.
as far as an army.
Nothing that mutants don't deserve.
Yeah.
I mean, that's entirely fair.
I will say that Dark Angels and Blood Angels will reap a lot of benefits from being Codex compliant because they need it. They absolutely do, because we need those chapter masters.
True.
Space Wolves just don't bring anything that's fieldable competitively. They're a very different type that doesn't really fit the mold for how the competitive scene is going to look, I would say.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
MEQs are not the most durable things, and that's a lot of Space Wolves' bread and butter. MEQs, or sort of like scout units, with the Wolfen stat line without the storm shield.
Yeah, if they have a 4-up armor save and their storm, yep, it's a 4-up armor save. So that brings them to a 3-up on with the new Codex Storm Shield. They're not going to survive. There's no reason to bring them. Even though if they have a 5-up Feel No Pain, that's just not worth it unless there's a way someone can find to improve the save of Wolfen by 2. Which, good luck with that. As for the other lists, that's a bit of a different discussion. Drukhari have a very fun means of actually taking over again, but it's a tough one. It's a very tough one for them.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised to see this Drukhari list here, because I've been hearing a lot of people writing them off as dead on arrival.
Well, they were clarified in the fact that they spend no CP for bringing 3 patrols. So their detachment style is only patrols. There is no other way, I would believe, to field Drukhari feasibly in competitive play. Or a better way of looking at it is no competitive player will look at Drukhari and try and run a different style of detachments, because multiple patrols, 3 of them, allows them to bring the most units possible for them and have no issues in the matter, because they can limit their number of rack uses, but seems like spamming racks is another way to go. With 1 Cabalite, just so they are fine there. And then lots of Venom spam. We got Raiders. It seems like it's just a hold to form sort of situation for the Drukhari, which makes absolute sense to me.
Let's see. Next, I believe. Yeah, at this point, what armies really suffer?
At the moment, GSC.
It
went from they dominated the meta mid-8th, and now they are paying the price. They were probably the highest skill cap army out there, and then someone decided to show people that, oh, if you actually know how to use them, you can win a game. And
Thank you
then
for swinging by,
GW
Lutens.
murdered the boys. Look at how they murdered my boys. They
Yeah.
are. It's catastrophe would happen to them because their points makes them not worth it. The setup for how they're played now, because you would have to field brigades or battalions or whatever for them. The detachment setup doesn't fit them. Their style of play now, with aberrants being gone, their guns don't matter because infantry still, lots of them are still infantry for their heavy weapons. Bringing Goliaths or something like that won't work because unfortunately they don't have T8 capable units, I believe, except unless you run a Brew Brothers detachment, which, guess what? They don't get anything from Astra Militarum Codex or anything like that. They are deprived of so much, and now they just can't make use of it.
And ever since their codex came out, a lot of their key units have just been steadily rising in price.
Yeah, but if you're referring to point cost, yes, I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, that's basically what I was saying there.
Yeah.
And Nova, I believe you had something to add there on what armies suffer?
Just Knights in general, Chaos and Imperial, due to how the secondaries are set up and due to terrain. Because secondaries are not exactly good because there's the psychic ones where you can only take one, which is kill enemy psychers. Then there's a lot of the action-based ones you're not going to be taking as knights. So I think that's like another two. So you're pretty much shoehorned into like 3 different sections for secondaries, all of which are not the easiest to get to. And then, like I said, obscuring is kind of the biggest nerf to them. Now,
Yeah, everything can hide
perhaps
from
the
them,
codex
but
will come
nothing. But they can't hide from anything.
Yeah.
And I do apologize for cutting you off like that. I'm very sorry for that.
I'm pretty sure Noah can agree with me on this one. Is Knights will probably be a very, very, very low tier pick until their codex comes out, where their codex has to value holding probably 1 or 2 objectives, and they'll have to get a lot of kill objectives.
Yeah.
Because Knights most of the time people argue that they're a support unit, which makes perfect sense. But unfortunately, GW added them; they're here to stay. GW needs to make a way for Knights to have a standing, but the problem is if they give them too easy of an objective, then Knights are going to be subject to nerf bats again, and I don't think Knight players want that. They want to just be able to compete rather than just dominate.
Yeah, especially with the new points. Like, honestly, they didn't need to raise the points at all. And now that's also before they have any of the new codex stuff, so this is in a vacuum. But as it is right now, Knights could honestly go back to 8th edition points and be fine, because the core mission itself is so against them.
They can't do much anyways.
It's actually funny, though.
So,
I think one unit that wouldn't want to go back to its tail end 8th points is the Dominus Knights.
Yeah, and they honestly don't need to. Yeah, they could stay at 625 for the Castellan, because to field a Castellan as part of the support, that's a minimum of 5 to 11 CP to do it correctly. Because you got to spend 3 for the detachment, then you got to spend another 2 to get a Warlord trait and a relic, and then you got, if you're running them as Raven, that's another 3. And then, so yeah, that's pretty much the vast majority of your CP on this one support unit. So I doubt you'll see them outside of your Knights list now.
Yeah, that actually hurts some chaos lists.
Another one about sufferers. Thousand Suns and Grey Knights.
Oh yeah, because of the smite change.
So this was something that is a bit of an issue right now, and GW's yet to address this as far as I'm aware. And that is a single psyker being able to cast smite multiple times. If they keep that in, if that is well and truly intended, big ol' if that is well and truly intended, Thousand Suns are then able to field the most powerful damaging unit in the game.
Magnus multi-smiting.
Magnus multi-smiting, which, granted, this is the top value of what's possible, and is probably like a 0.1% chance or something. I don't know how to properly explain it, but Magnus can output a maximum of 48 wounds in a single smite phase. He could walk up and kill 2 knights if he so wanted to.
Which, I mean, that's kind of fitting for who Magnus is, but that is not healthy for the game environment.
That's the issue. Yes, that's the issue. Lore-wise, it fits perfectly.
Yeah, if we're talking lore-wise, then a lot of things in this game needs to change.
Game-wise, no.
Yeah.
No.
I support one lore-based change. Custode auto-winning.
Unfortunately, I'd have to bring up Plague War for that one, where the Custodies lost like bitches.
No. As soon as they deploy, the scribes on Earth just auto-record a win. Doesn't matter what happens.
Yep.
I see.
So just putting Custode on the table, you win.
In some form of on paper, yes, sure. But overall, Thousand Suns, we had a couple of FAQ changes we had to do, unfortunately, which was Under Stickers is not in play as of right now. We had to make sure that was in there, and we also had to remove the ability for a single psyker to cast smite multiple times. Because unfortunately, it just creates a broken type build, which some organizations on their turn for their turns might very well permit. And I would say if you are a competitive player and you have Thousand Suns, you have Magnus, make a build as soon as possible. Double check with all the tournaments you plan on going to see what the rules are, their rules clarifications, and then bring Magnus and just watch him KO. Probably do about 30 damage average.
I think if anyone here, we might see Magnus make an appearance on my streams at some point in the not too distant future. Hopefully I can get him on here before they change everything and see if I can get that to happen with Magnus.
Well, the concept is you won't be doing that at Tabletop Veterans because that's I can't permit that.
You notice I'm not exact. I haven't entered into that.
Right.
I'm just.
It's like, okay, bring Magnus. You're not going to do what you think you're going to do. But aside from that, it's just there's a level of just what play can be brought. Yeah, I think that covers almost all the lists I can think of. I think you have one more question.
Yeah, we sort of touched on it earlier, but I think this could be something of a discussion topic. What lists do you see that might be worth watching?
List that are worth watching is a tough one because right now that's a level of don't know. Nothing's been settled yet, but there is Nurgling and Plaguebearer and some stuff like that I have a couple people I know fielding that thing, and it is a terrifying beast to look at because it just won't die. It will never die. look at the offshoot Space Marines. Ultramarines will be consistent forever anyways. But I don't think they will be the consistent tournament winners because it relies on the player's skill instead.
Yeah.
And then
Think
people,
White
unfortunately,
Scars.
White Scars definitely have potential. I myself am looking at a potential Raven Guard list as Minotaurs. And there is a very simple reason why I'm looking at that, and it's just a level of maybe this will work. I don't know. It's a funny one that I'm looking at. If it works, great. It'll be something I can field. It will just blindside people. But it's Raven Guard are probably going to be up there unless GW fixes the eliminators, which I don't think they will. Because eliminators lost their non-LOS shot type, which
Yeah. Good.
now
I mean,
it's helpful. I just get the feeling that it may as well have been intended because their non-LOS weapons also got a +2 to hit when they use them, which I think they might just use that and make that's like, there you go, that's all you're getting. But I might be having a different use for eliminators in the future, which is funny. Simulators are definitely up there because they're getting a pretty big adjustment to their setup for in the codex, since they're going to lose their free hit roll. But overall, there's a couple chapters: White Scar Salamanders, Iron Hands potentially. It's out there. Extra Militarum lists are always something to keep an eye on because there's such a massive variety of different types of shooting. Tau, I think, got to the short end of the stick in all this. They're not weak, but they just don't work.
I think you're going to have to see a change in play style for Tau.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of Tau just yet.
They're mess them up.
Chaos is actually more on the field because they don't actually have to care about Blast because it was just a whatever situation to them in the first place. Chaos does need some adjustments for them to be unique in their own way, but right now they have their own things they can bring. Chaos Space Marine type units, there's a level of damage that you can be seeing pumping up from Defilers and Lord of Scorns, of course, because they're still good no matter really what you do to them. Theme type, the Mauler Fiend and Overfiends potentially might have some stuff, but that remains to be seen.
yeah,
what have I
I've
not
seen
covered?
a lot of talk about the Chaos vehicles and what they could possibly bring in.
Now, Chaos vehicles, most of them didn't ignore didn't ignore movement penalty, which made them utterly dogshit. But hitting on a 4 still with the access of Demon Forged as well as some possible rerolls or pluses to hit that the rest of the army can field them, thanks to the Master Possession or the Disco Lord.
Yeah.
Makes them a fieldable army, and that is something that will probably be popping up. I think it's Alpha Legion or Iron Rouge, one of the two that are pretty dominant.
Do you think the Gaunt Carpet is ever going to make it past meme status?
Nope. I missed the phrase you're referring to.
People were bouncing around like 240 Gaunt lists for NIDS with like a couple of Zone Thropes or whatever the HQ Psyker unit is.
To be honest, well, so looking at that is a level of trying to bore your opponent into making a bad decision. In competitive play, that will not happen if you're playing against a reasonable person who will look at it and be like, okay, I just have to do this, and then they can ignore the gaunts from then on. Granted, falling back and shooting isn't a thing for most armies now, but it's a level of a number. Even low volume shot or low volume attack units can really outmaneuver that, thanks to the fact of gaunts move only 6 inches, trying to mess them up or whatever. They'll have to stretch out far enough and to where if you don't deal some casualties, they just can't extend the whole distance anymore, or they start to suffer leadership issues. And thanks to the setup of how cohesion works, it's going to be a lot easier to deal with these tendril-style horde armies. It's not worth it, in my opinion.
And if the Gaunt player makes one mistake in pulling a casualty, it could cost them half a unit.
Yes. At the same time, another one would be the fact of NIDs can be good, but it's a lot of work, and I don't know the solution for it yet. It seems that NID shooting will have to be pretty damn awesome, but it's just have to wait and see for them. Orcs, we've seen a list that's already proven to be quite effective. Necrons have some decent stuff, but we're still waiting on all their data sheets to come out and their
5
codex.
people?
I think that covers all bases.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. And I think we've burned through most of what I had prepared for this. We're quite ahead of schedule. I wasn't sure how long we would be on each topic. If there's anyone in chat that wants to ask any questions, or if y'all have any interesting insights you wish to go over.
Well, I think the main reason why it's easy to answer these questions at the moment is just everything's up in the air. It's a case of there's no new codexes out. This is a period that will extend only into October, so players only have about a month and a half to really make use of all their stuff. Potentially 2 months, who knows? I don't know when they'll be releasing the new codexes, but it's just a case of try it. Just go for it. See what works for you, because you don't know when your new codex is coming. You have all these new rules. You have to work with the new stuff. You have to learn the game all over again, almost. Yeah, it's just a case of the game is open-ended. There's not a lot of events to compare. You can try and use the 2 top 4s that exist on 40k stats, or try and go elsewhere. You will see people talk about how, oh, this unit is overpowered and broken. But usually the case when it comes from a personal opinion, most of the time that player played probably 1 or 2 games against that unit and got destroyed, and they just believe it's overpowered. They don't think about the dice. They don't think about anything else. It's entering a point where if you want to be competitive, start thinking. Think for yourself, design a list that is ready to field all the problems you see, go and play it, see if you encounter any issues. Do not observe for the fact you're looking to win, observe for the fact of identifying the weaknesses. Whatever potential stuff is out there that you realize can make your list falter. And from there, build again. Keep refining your list until you feel like you've covered as many bases as possible.
Don't know how to play Nomen. Well, I was thinking of
That's really all I have left in the tank.
doing something to discuss that. Would you be interested in a series like that? Would anyone watching that might not know be interested? I did, looking over that link you gave me, I found something I found rather interesting. There we go. There's an interesting solar watch list that I actually kind of like, something I was experimenting with.
Unfortunately, I'm not very familiar with custodies. I've actually never applied them in a playing setting. And someone's got Star Wars playing in the background. Sorry, I heard droid. But overall, custodies are not something I really look at. Unfortunately, it's a bit too low in number for me, despite the fact they have a lot of mechanics that I would like to indulge in, but it doesn't fit my playstyle.
I'm actually curious what their plan was with some of these unit choices. Might be something I do a little exploration on myself.
What?
Let's see.
Ooh, Minotaur lands on.
Yeah,
Well, at the
Venetari
moment,
Lance is an unusual choice
at the
there.
moment, I'm getting a bit hungry since I've actually have yet to eat breakfast even.
Oh,
This, this is a situation for me.
That's
Thank you for
fair.
having me, Nurses.
Thank you for coming in and talking with us.
No problem at all. I'm hoping that TTBL continues to expand and stuff like that. I hope everyone is able to find their competitive choices and play them out and enjoy themselves. Anyways, have a good one.
Maybe as whatever season or however you structure it moves on, we can come back and retouch some of these ideas and see what people are doing.
Certainly. Anyways, have a pleasant rest of your stream.
You too. Or yeah, it's Monday. I can't speak. I'm actually kind of I'm not seeing any questions at the moment. I'm out of questions of my own.
orange. Guess it is.
I did schedule this till 2, but I think when something runs out of steam, it's best to cut your losses for the time being than to try to extend it without any
Yeah.
real plan. I see those of you that
Alright.
have.
Well, it was fun.
Yes, it was. And I look forward to continuing to do these. Maybe not always on competitive topics, but seeing what other mechanics we can explore going into ninth.
Yeah.
I just like the alliteration of Meta Monday.
It is a nice one.
Those of y'all that came by, if you aren't following and want to see some 40K played on here, or if you want to catch next time I put one of these Meta Mondays up, and you haven't hit that follow button, hit it. Stick around. Who knows what'll show up here? Thank y'all for coming out and watching. Those of y'all that stuck around and chatted with me. Thank you for coming in, Nova.
No problem.
I'll know who to bring in whenever they start announcing anything involving knights.
Here's hoping it's something good.
I hope. They kind of need something right now.
Good thing I'm a masochist, apparently. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to play anymore. Because it's nothing but pain.
Eh, who knows? With some of these things, maybe you'll surprise someone, catch someone off guard.
Yeah, I'm hoping. Well,
And thank y'all for watching.
alright. Well, I shall talk to you later.
See you around. And goodbye to everyone. Until next time. cutting it a little early. But breaks sometimes.